In our next session, we would just like to share some cataloging news and updates with you. And so I'm going to ask Robin Six to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Nathan. I'm pleased to introduce today's speakers for OCLC's cataloging news. Chelsea Dalgord, Product Analyst for Metadata Services for over a year and 6 years on the WMS implementation team. Prior to OCLC, she worked as a cataloger at Bay College Library. Jay Weitz, Senior Consulting Database Specialist in Metadata Policy, is an OCLC representative to several national and international organizations and has been at OCLC since 1982. And now I'll turn it over to Chelsea.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Robin. As Robin mentioned, my name is Chelsea Dalgord, and I'm a product analyst on the Metadata Services team at OCLC. I'm actually standing in today for John, who unfortunately couldn't attend the session, and I'm here to give an update on an exciting project we announced in January this year. And John and I are actually just two of many here at OCLC working on this project. The project is still in early stages, but we're making a lot of progress and would like to share with the community. On January 9th, we announced that OCLC has been awarded a grant from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation to develop a shared entity management infrastructure. Today, many research libraries have been experimenting with creating linked data, and they have created new interfaces, but there continues to be a gap in the data infrastructure. The Mellon Foundation chose OCLC for this important work because of our ability to scale and provide a long-term home for linked data entities, our experience with linked data models, our willingness to collaborate with other Mellon projects, and our cooperative and shared cataloging model. To give you a quick overview for this project, this is a $2.436 million grant, which will support linked data management initiatives underway in the library and scholarly communications community. OCLC will match this grant funding with additional investments to publish authoritative and easily accessible entity descriptions for creative works and persons as part of a persistent, centralized infrastructure that will be jointly curated by the community and OCLC when completed in December 2021. This infrastructure will aggregate links to other representations of works and persons and external vocabularies and authority files that will provide a solid foundation for libraries, cultural heritage organizations, and scholarly communication communities to ultimately make their materials more connected and discoverable on the web. The quote on this slide is actually from our press release, and it highlights the crucial role that infrastructure will play in this transition. Just as we have provided infrastructure for OCLC numbers and authority records to help improve discovery experiences and connect systems, OCLC will create a new library infrastructure for persistent identifiers and connections to authoritative resources that will place library collections in a broader context. And OCLC has a long history of working with linked data, stretching back well over a decade. Back in 2009, OCLC began work to understand what it meant to publish linked data. This started with publishing FAST and VIAF data as linked data, and ultimately, in 2012, we published all of WorldCat.org as linked data. Our next set of work explored use cases for linked data. The Entity.js research project investigated end-user discovery applications for linked data, and the person-entity lookup pilot evaluated how we could connect our current linked data services to library systems. Over the next few years, we investigated several ways of creating linked data, but we knew that we needed a more holistic approach in order to involve libraries in the maintenance and curation of this metadata. In 2017, with Project Passage, using the Wikibase infrastructure, we tested how a user could create, edit, publish, and use linked data, all in a single system, working specifically with authority metadata. The ongoing Content DM linked data pilot has tested those principles with cultural heritage metadata. So all of this work together and expertise accumulated into this current project. The grant focuses on infrastructure, again, as we've been saying, and making sure it forms a robust backbone for libraries to build on. We say production scale and infrastructure to mean this is not just an experiment. OCLC is committed to moving forward. We'll be making sure that APIs are provided for libraries to use this backbone for both discovery and for metadata creation workflows. We will also be providing a basic user interface for libraries to use for creating and managing entities. So how is this project going to benefit libraries? We see the benefits for libraries extended towards both discovery and to metadata and cataloging, as we've been mentioning, because libraries will be able to create identifiers at the point of need for things that OCLC does not have descriptions for. We foresee more efficient workflows for special collections and hidden materials. Libraries will be able to use identifiers to easily enrich content and provide connections between materials and collections. No matter how far along a library is with using new data models, or if they wish to continue work in MARC, they'll see an improved quality and efficiency from this project. This project will also help provide the basis for libraries to experiment with new, consistent, and efficient cataloging workflows across collections and material types in the future. So a few more details about where we currently are in the project, and I'm one of the main leads on working with the advisory group. So we currently have 24 different institutions with a new site that just joined on Monday from all over the world in the advisory group. And you can see we include public, academic, research, and national libraries. We meet with the libraries monthly to discuss different topics, and we'll continue to meet with the group until December 2021. The advisory group libraries are being asked to participate in testing increments throughout the project for the basic user interface and to help test the APIs. We are actually approaching our first testing phase at the end of this month. Advisory group members are also asked to participate in user experience research, which includes interviews and different workshops to discuss entity creation and management workflows. We also continue to stay in close communication with additional linked data organizations throughout the project, including LD4P, PCC, ALCTS, Directors of Technical Services at Large Research Institutions, the OCLC Research Library Partnership, and more to ensure that this infrastructure will meet everybody's needs. We also have a group of libraries participating in our user research outside of the advisory group, and we would love to hear your feedback if you're interested in sharing. If you have any questions about the project or would like to get involved, please email our linked data at oclc.org. And of course, we'll continue to share more information with the community as the project progresses. Thank you for your time, and everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Jay Weitz, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about news from OCLC, as I so often do. A copy of the news from OCLC will be distributed along with, or will be available on the website where the recordings of the sessions are also available after the presentation. I hope by now most of you are aware that various OCLC product and services release notes are available on the OCLC website under the Release Notes section of the Librarian's Toolbox. More than a dozen different OCLC products and services have release notes and other information available on that page. WorldCat matching and WorldCat validation updates are among those that are being made available and have been made available. The WorldCat matching release notes we started to distribute in January of 2020. They are mainly relatively small improvements to duplicate detection and resolution, DDR, and or to data sync matching. We've been making WorldCat validation release notes available on a pretty regular basis since September of 2018. The most recent ones include the February 2020 MARC Bibliographic and Holdings Update number 29, the new MARC codes that were released by the Library of Congress between November 2019 and January 2020, the long-anticipated updates to the validation rules for MARC authorities, which began to be rolled out in March of 2020 in coordination with the Library of Congress and all of the NACO nodes. And the most recent set of release notes were from April of 2020, which included various changes to the encoding level, which will be talked about in just a few minutes. FAST, as you probably know, is faceted application of subject terminology. You may be interested to know that several new headings have been established to assist FAST users when cataloging resources about COVID-19. The new headings are based on Library of Congress subject headings assigned to WorldCat records that contain the term COVID-19 in a title field. Some examples are coronavirus infections, alternative treatment, coronavirus infections diagnosis. COVID-19 headings in FAST have been made available since June 1st of 2020. By now, you have also probably heard of the REALM project, REALM, which stands for Reopening Archives, Libraries, and Museums. The most current news about the REALM project is that they have just today released systematic literature review of SARS-CoV-2, which is the official name of COVID-19. Spread, environmental attenuation, prevention, and decontamination, which was prepared by Battelle, our partner one of our partners in the REALM project. This is an in-depth review of published literature on virus attenuation, on commonly found materials that can inform discussion and decisions about operations in archives, libraries, and museums. You probably have received in your mailbox today a notice about that if you regularly subscribe to official announcements from OCLC. In conjunction with that, you may be interested to learn that there has been, during March and April of 2020, there was a record-setting spike in WebJunction course catalog usage, a 650% increase in users, and a 1,791% increase in hours spent learning. Quite amazing numbers there. In fact, we had approximately as many learners in WebJunction's catalog in the month of April alone as we had during all of last year. So people are using their work at home time pretty wisely. That's about everything I wanted to say. So next slide.
Thank you, Jay. And next, we're going to have just cataloging updates from metadata quality staff. We've been doing this the last couple of times for our session at the ALA sessions, but I would like to invite Robin back to give a brief bio for metadata quality.
Sure, Nathan. Metadata quality maintains and enhances data within the WorldCat bibliographic database, WorldCat knowledge base, WorldCat registry, and the WorldCat Discovery Central Index. Many metadata quality staff are also involved with outreach activities with member institutions and serve as OCLC liaisons to various cataloging committees and groups.
Thank you, Robin. And here are our updates.
In close cooperation with UCLA, OCLC has taken on the task to add Cyrillic text to bibliographic records that lack Cyrillic. The first phase of this project was limited to Russian language resources published in Russia and cataloged in English. Records in other languages and more complex records will have to wait for later stages of the project. Existing WorldCat records with Cyrillic text were mined to create a dictionary of known words. Then in late February, Cyrillic scripts were generated for over 885,000 Romanized-only Russian WorldCat records. An additional 78,000 records encoded as Program for Cooperative Cataloging, BibCo, and Concert records will be processed separately. The number of Russian records that will have been Cyrillicized will be close to 1 million, increasing the percentage of Russian WorldCat records with Cyrillic from 12% to 26%, more than double the number of records. More detailed information can be found in the OCLC research blog, Hanging Together. On March 3rd, Cyrillicizing WorldCat Russian records was posted, followed by Cyrillic alphabet in WorldCat posted on April 15th. And just as a side note, those articles describe in detail how the OCLC API was used to update those records. The WorldCat Registry is a free service for all libraries in consortia helping to raise the visibility of libraries on behalf of the OCLC membership and the library community. The WorldCat Registry is a web-based directory and an authoritative single source for information that defines institutional identity, services, relationships, contacts, and other key data. When you maintain a registry profile, your institution's online services also get greater visibility in places they normally wouldn't. Through a variety of open source web services, your registry data is syndicated across many popular websites and mobile applications where information seekers start to search, such as worldcat.org. With links such as your online catalog's base URL or your open URL resolver distributed in this manner, more people from a broad-based web audience discover and use your content. With all of this in mind, it's easy to see why maintaining your WorldCat registry record and keeping it updated with current information is important. As part of the ongoing review and updating of OCLC's Bibliographic Formats and Standards, or BFAS, we took on the task of updating the 6XX introductory matter. We soon decided it would be best to split this information up into two separate pages. While subject access points are all 6XX fields, not all 6XX fields are subject access points. The new page subjects general information was added to the access point section of the manual, and the 6XX introduction page was completely revised. On the new general information page, we brought together all the subject added entry fields, including the fields used for local subject added entries. This page contains all the input standards, indicators, and some subfields applicable to subject added entries all on one page. The completely revised 6XX introduction page is an overview of all of the 6XX fields and is the lead-in page for all the individual 6XX field pages. These pages were published in early February. And now I'll turn it over to Shana, who will talk about virtual Ask QC office hours.
Thanks, Robin. The Virtual Ask QC Office Hours, or VAOH, is a live question and answer outreach program, or office hour, that began in January of 2018. During each session, Metadata Quality staff give a brief 10 to 15-minute presentation on a topic of interest to catalogers. Following the presentation, chat is open to any participant to ask questions about the topic presented or general policy questions. Topics include anything from WorldCat bibliographic and authority record quality issues to cataloging questions. Questions about MARC, RDA, BFAS, and how to apply these standards and guidelines are also welcome. Following each session, participants are directed to a quick optional survey that contains only 3 questions. This is a great way for participants to communicate their thoughts on that day's session and any suggestions they have for future sessions. We appreciate and use this feedback as many of the topics discussed from past office hours have come from these suggested topics. Last month's presentation was about the mysterious 3XX fields, which attracted our largest audience to date of 505 participants in attendance. Session links are available at oc.lc/askqc. Here you will also find links to the previous sessions. Next slide, please. RDA hybridization is something that we routinely do for records with English language cataloging. A few years back, there was a PCC task force on RDA hybridization that made recommendations. The objective is to update legacy records as much as possible to function in the RDA environment without the need for catalogers to take the time to make manual changes or necessarily recatalog items. LAC staff had expressed an interest in the same kind of hybridization for their French language records. We had already developed hybridization for some types of materials for English and German language cataloging. So we began to add the same for French, then processing the 5 million books records. We will be moving on to other formats in the future. We do restrict some changes on records with 040 subfield E, NCAFNOR, where field 300 is complex. In the example here, you can see the pre and post image where we spelled out the abbreviations in the 300 field and added the appropriate 33X fields. In addition to spelling out the abbreviations in field 300, we would also spell out some abbreviations in notes as well. I will now pass it over to Brian to talk about deriving authority records.
As part of the May 30th Record Manager install, a new feature was added, allowing those with permissions for creating NACO or Canadiana authority records to derive an authority record from a personal name heading in a bibliographic record. Similar functionality is expected to be installed soon for corporate, conference, geographic, and family names, as well as for titles, including name titles and series. For personal names, in addition to the 1XX and 670, the service attempts to populate fields 046, 368, 377, and 378 based on data in the target bibliographic field. It also offers a selection of 400s based on permutations on the target XOO field, and linked 880 offers selections for 670s when there is more than one unique choice, and offers selections for 670 subfield B when there is more than one unique choice, based on looking in 245 subfield C, 250 subfield B, 511, and 508, in addition to the target XOO field. For non-personal names, for the initial release, the generated authority record will be minimal. It will include the target 1XX field and a 670. For family names, it will also include a 667, indicating that the name can't be used as a subject. For conference names, when subfield C, D, and N are not present, it will include a 667, pointing the user to specific instances of the conference. For series, it will include the relevant 64X fields. On June 1st and into the morning of June 2nd, OCLC loaded into Canadiana 1,404,304 name authority records submitted by the libraries of the Bureau de Coopération Interuniversitaire, or BCI, a coalition of Quebec universities. These records have been matched against existing Canadiana records. If no match was found and the record passed basic structural integrity checks, it was selected for loading. Prior to loading, the original BCI 001 and 003 were moved to the second 035 field. A new Canadiana control number was assigned. The 003 was changed to Kauno. This new 001 and 003 pair was added as the first 035 due to the requirements of the loading process. A 667 note was added to each of the records, indicating that the record was batch loaded and must be evaluated before being used to ensure that it meets the standards set by LAC. If the records contained an 016, it was deleted per LAC's instructions to ensure that all of these records will produce a validation error, indicating that an 016 is required.
Recently, OCLC has made a major change in validation that allows use of all the standard MARC 21 labels when cataloging online. You may use these when adding new bibliographic records or when upgrading or editing existing records. Bibliographic Formats and Standards, or BFAS, has been updated to reflect this change. Note that encoding level I equals blank, or full level, and K equals 7, or minimal level. Currently, you may still use the OCLC alphabetic codes, but are encouraged to use the standard MARC 21 codes. Before any major changes are made to eliminate the OCLC alphabetic codes in WorldCat, we will make announcements with plenty of advance notice. For more information, search for the validation release notes on the OCLC website and look at the April 2020 release notes. Or you can view the recordings of the June AskQC office hours where the topic was all about OCLC encoding levels. The recordings have been posted on the OCLC website at the URL shown on this slide. Over the past 2 years, OCLC has been working closely with the Center for Research Libraries, CRL, to leverage a grant from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation to expand our shared print registration capabilities. And in early July, we will publicly announce completion of our work, which allows libraries to register their shared print commitments for multi-part monographs and serials with WorldShare Collection Manager, and to search WorldCat bibliographic and local holdings records with the WorldCat Metadata API. Both of these enhancements are included in your OCLC cataloging subscription. And if you're interested in learning more, we'll soon be sharing additional details on our shared print and metadata API web pages. And I believe we'll move to questions now.
Yep. So we are at the time to ask any cataloging policy questions, also asking questions to Chelsea if you have questions about the linked data project, and then Jay and the rest of Metadata Quality about cataloging policy. Please enter these in the chat. We've had several questions come in during the presentation. And the first one, Chelsea, I think was asked before you said it, but it certainly wouldn't hurt to say it again. So Chelsea, how can libraries become part of the advisory group or future advisory groups?
If you can just please email our linked data at oclc.org, and I can put that in chat too, and just reach out and say that you're interested in joining the advisory group. We would be happy to have you. Thank you.
We did have a question then, with a new way in BFAS to indicate that a print electronic access journal link is no longer available, can we search by domain? Can we search by BibPearl? Various things like that. And I believe Charlene Morrison is going to start to answer that question.
Hi. Yes, it was a change that was made, and you are correct. No one can search the subfield Z in field 856 is not searchable, so you would be able to pull it up through a search. It wouldn't be indexed. We are looking into this, and we'll be discussing this in our BFAS meetings, and so we will be getting back to you about that question.
So more information to come. Great, thank you, Charlene. So in updating OCLC records, should obsolete URLs, for example, for eBrary, be removed from the master record? Cynthia, do you want to answer that question? And I can read it again if you'd like.
Yes, please read it again. Thank you.
When updating OCLC records, should obsolete URLs, for example, eBrary, be removed from the master record?
Yes, if the URL is obsolete and no longer in effect, that the service does no longer offer the ebook or the e-journal, feel free to delete those, or you can just leave them as is. It's really up to you what time you have when you're doing maintenance on the records.
And Cynthia, since we have you on right now, there's a question about encoding levels. And so are we encouraged to use the MARC codes for encoding level? Should these be changed when existing records are enhanced?
Yes, you are encouraged to use them. It's not a requirement, but you are encouraged to use the standard MARC 21 codes for encoding levels. Those are the numeric codes rather than the alphabetic codes. And when you are enhancing or upgrading or even just editing for some reason existing records and you want to change the code from I or K to blank or 7, the corresponding code in the MARC 21 codes, feel free to go ahead and do that.
Thank you. Brian, just to give you a second, Brian Baldus, the next two questions are going to go to you, and it had to do with the LAC work and the generate record work. So the first question is, when the records loaded into the French authority file, the 016 was not deleted. These records simply don't yet have a 016?
Some of the records that were loaded may have had an 016. It wasn't. I'm not sure what data was in that. It wasn't clear whether that was an actual 016 that matched a Canadiana 016 or not. And so all of those were deleted, and then that way all of them were loaded with no 016, as you've said. But in order to ensure that none of them had an 016, any existing 016 was deleted from before they were loaded. And
we decided, or this was in communication with LAC, correct? Not to have an 016 in the record? Yeah.
Right.
All right. So then the other question is a comparison, or can you compare the authority record functionality for Derive between Record Manager and Connection?
We attempted to have the same essential behavior or end result, at least, in between the two functions. There are some minor differences in actual results in a few cases, and then in terms of the usability, the connection macro asks the user a few questions or asks the user to supply data and then populates that data into the authority record, while Record Manager, once you select the commands, tell it whether you want to keep, or which 4xx's or 670 you want to keep, then it lands you in a template editor, and then you can fill in the data from there. Those are the main differences. And also,
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Also, for the initial release for non-personal names, like I said in the presentation, the non-personal names end up with a fairly skeletal record, whereas the connection macro can populate it just as completely as a personal name.
Robert, do you want to do a plug for the macros that were updated? The generate macros for connection?
We did an update last December for the OCLC Macrobook that you can download separately from the same website location as downloading the connection client software. The version of the OCLC Macrobook that comes with the connection client is older, so you have to download the OCLC Macrobook separately. The changes that we made to that include things like updating the list of countries for countries that have changed names that affect generating things like field 043, and that also figured into the generate authority macro in connection. Just this past week, we were talking about some of the changes that are needed to other macros, so I think we will probably put out another version of the OCLC Macrobook near the end of the year.
And Robert, since you're on the line, a question came in. Do any of the macros work with connection browser?
No, it is connection client only. No macros work with the connection browser.
Great, thank you. Cynthia, so another question about encoding levels. Will the alpha codes eventually all be changed automatically to the numeric ones?
So we do plan to change the alphabetic codes to the numeric codes, but we know this process is going to take a long time. We estimate years. I would encourage you to go look at the office hours that were posted from earlier this month, because we go into that in much more depth there.
Thank you. Laura, since we said that we merge with international records, what is your policy when you have different romanization standards applied?
We don't have an official policy on how to handle different romanization schemes. What I would recommend is, if you're not an expert in that language or script, that if you're unsure, then don't merge them. And I think we in metadata quality would follow the same guidance as if we're not sure, don't merge. We don't really actually get that many requests to merge records with non-Latin script. And if anyone else wants to add to that, feel free.
Any additions to Laura's comment? If not, I will say that there is some NACO functionality built into Connection Browser, but it is not with the macros. So if you are using browser, you can check out some NACO functionality there. Okay, so there was a question about should the status of name authority records in Connection and Record Manager be the same? So earlier today, Lucas ran into two NARs that have been out of distribution in Connection, but are still having the in-distribution status in Record Manager. When we tried to update those two NARs through Connection, the system said the record is locked and in use by another user. So this is a situation where we need to see the specific example. So if you could send an email to support@oclc.org, they can start the process to look into that, and we can try to figure out what is going on with that. Laura, can a NACO funnel member join the member merge program?
Yes, they have PCC status, so yes, they could absolutely join.
Oh, and you know, Dean, I think I skipped your question. So Dean had asked, let me go back, about, obsolete URLs such as eBury. What was the answer to that?
Nathan, you had asked me to answer that one, and basically, if there is an obsolete URL where the provider is no longer a provider or in business, you are welcome to delete those when you are editing the records if you wish to.
Thank you, Cynthia. Robert, is there a list, or do we know, or can we identify records who don't fill out the 008 byte 23 properly for online journals? Is there maybe something we can do to help that out or identify those?
Well, oftentimes problems like that affect multiple records have been reported to us. And in fact, Becky Culbertson, who's asking, has reported that kind of thing to us in the past. And then we can take care of them as a group. Just off the cuff, sometimes it's really difficult to determine how to fix these things because a record will be a hybrid of both print and online attributes. And so you start looking at it, and it has an 856 that makes it look like it's online, but it has a 300 that makes it look like print, but it's got a note that makes it look like it's online. And, you know, we really have to puzzle over some of these to fix them. But if it is a case of a vendor is doing it all one way incorrectly, we certainly do prefer to be told about that kind of thing so we can get in touch with the vendor in particular, plus fix everything that is online that came from that vendor.
Thank you, Robert. All right, there was a question earlier in terms of taking records from Connection to MarcEdit, adding them and put them back into Connection. At the moment, so no, this isn't possible. If you take records out of Connection and edit them in MarcEdit record, you would need to either replace them using the WorldCat API or within DataSync. So Cynthia, encoding levels are very popular today. Have alphabetic encoding levels been purely generated for OCLC, or are those universal and we simply not use the numeric codes?
Those alphabetic codes, the ones you're familiar with, K, M, J, or the ones we have right now, are purely OCLC codes. They were made up when OCLC first started allowing member libraries to add records to WorldCat. And this was because the history of this is that back in the beginning of MARC, only the Library of Congress could use those numeric codes. And so that's why OCLC invented the alphabetic codes. But over the years, things have loosened up. Many people are using the numeric codes now. Anybody can use them. And so that is why we were making the change.
So should we catalog items in Cyrillic using the Cyrillic characters in the 245 and Romanize in a second 245? I'm not sure who would like to answer this question. Maybe, Robin, that was your topic, but I'm not sure if you know the answer.
So this is Cynthia. I'll try that one.
Thank you.
When you are working in connection, you will have what we call parallel fields. So you would have two 245s, one with the Cyrillic characters and one with the Romanized characters, if you are indeed Romanizing the Cyrillic characters. Behind the scenes in MARC, that field with the non-Latin characters, in this case Cyrillic, will actually be an 880 field. So when you output or export the MARC from WorldCat, you'll get an 880 field, not two 245 fields. So it's the way it displays in our interfaces for editing in Connection and in Record Manager that it looks like there are two 245 fields. I hope that answers the question.
So Brian, could you comment on the records for CreateSpace, the publisher, especially Juvenile Materials?
Okay. I would say that they should be treated, that CreateSpace is treated as a printer rather than a publisher, and so that you would enter them as self-published materials, presumably under the author, unless there's other information that leads you away from the author and towards something other than CreateSpace as the publisher.
Thank you. We just had some comments coming in about the 880s and then Slavic cataloging manual with a link. Cynthia, going back to the Cyrillic, different libraries use different romanizations for Cyrillic. How does WorldCat cope with this situation?
Well, if you're cataloging in English language, OCLC recommends that you use the LC romanization tables. If you are cataloging in a different language of cataloging, there is not necessarily that expectation. We try to, that's certainly our guidelines. That's what we put out there, that if you're cataloging in English, use the LC romanization tables. But we know there are others from other languages. When we did this Cyrillic project where we added things, one of the requirements there was that we did this only for English language cataloging records. So we are not trying to generate Cyrillic from other romanization schemes other than from English language of cataloging records, where presumably they would have been using the LC romanization tables.
So the next question, I think, is going to go to either Chelsea or David. Will OCLC consider to enhance the connection client error message on telling us that error occurs after a certain number of characters like 110? Or maybe Jody. Who would like this question?
So I'm not sure if we can make a change to that exact error message. We can look at that with the validation changes that we could do. We are looking at making some changes to connection client. And so as we look at that, those changes we could evaluate if we can change the error messages also.
Thank you, David. So just, Brian, I think you kind of faded in and out with the CreateSpace. So I believe I remember what you're saying is that you would treat CreateSpace as a printer and not have them in the publisher field. Was that correct?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. In fact, Pat responded to that. Thank you, Pat. Use self-published by author. Okay. In our project of updating the AACR2 records to RDA hybrid records, do you convert 260 to 264 fields? Oh, and I didn't specify. Cynthia, do you want to answer that?
Sure. The answer is no. We don't do that. We did convert the 260 to 264 for records that were coded RDA that were created back in early days of RDA in 2013, 2014, before the 264 was even a MARC field. So we have converted those, but otherwise, no, we don't try to convert the 260 to the 264.
And Cynthia, going back to Cyrillic, so even English cataloging agencies have legacy data that do not always comply with the LC tables for Cyrillic. How do we handle that?
I'm going to have to defer on that one because I don't know the answer. I don't know how we're taking that into account. I know that Jenny Tovis from our Office of Research, who helped with that, is listening in this conversation, so she can help us answer that question when we put up the notes afterwards.
So a question probably for David again. Would you be able to look at the cataloging create extract metadata function? We've lost the ability on some of our clients, and support said this wouldn't or could not be fixed.
Yeah, I think I could possibly tie a couple of these together because I also saw one about the, I think it was the Glimmer box.
The Glimmer, oh, yep, I see that, yep.
So the one thing that I will just go ahead and say that we have details to work out, so don't ask a ton of questions. But previously you've asked the question directly of when is connection client going away. So one of the things that you'll be hearing more about soon is that we've decided to actually do the opposite, is to actually invest some more in connection client. So we'll be actually releasing some new versions. Don't have a schedule yet, so I know you're going to ask what day is it going to be available. We cannot answer that. You can't ask us what month it's going to be available. We can't answer that. You can't ask us exactly what's going to be in it because we can't answer that. We're telling you this before we have the answers, but we will be doing some new releases. And some of the things that we will do is such as the Glimmer box. We do know that and some other functionality that no longer works is confusing, so those will be removed. As far as the extraction functionality, that's functionality that we did decide to discontinue. So that's not something that we would actually be fixing in the client. It's actually something that we would remove from the menu item instead of fixing it. So that functionality had very, very low usage. And so what we wanted to do is, as we were looking at other things that we could work on, we decided to discontinue that. I can see in the chat that you're all incredibly disappointed that we're continuing. So,
I'm
sorry to disappoint you. Yeah, we will be announcing more information here in the next couple of weeks, months, etc.
Yes, thank you, David. Yes, we are getting quite a few comments just about this news, and we will definitely keep this community up to date as more information becomes available and we finalize or sort out the plans that we have for this. I think I don't really see any other questions coming in, so I think now would just be a good opportunity to move on. We'll end on a happy note with the connection information. We do have one more poll, so this has been a great time, and I know we're getting very close to the end of our 2.5 hours. We just have a couple things left for this, and so I'd like to ask Eric to do our last poll for this, and it was how many attendees attended the 2 May virtual AskQC office sessions. Shana referenced this in the metadata quality, and we're kind of highlighting this again. Oh, by the way, if you choose 245, that's wrong. You may have noticed that was kind of in 3 of the 4 questions. so a hint there. But we've been pretty excited, not only the attendance in this session, which has been much higher than our office hour attendance, but also those of you who have participated in our office hour sessions as well. And so we'd like to thank you for attending these. And once this poll closes, I will wrap things up. Shana had mentioned that there were 505 attendees that were across 2 sessions of the May virtual SQC office hours that covered the mysterious 3XX fields that Jay Weitz and Robin 6 presented on. And with that, I would first like to thank all of our presenters today for going over very interesting topics in the cataloging community online sharing session. I know that I learned a lot, even being a cataloger at OCLC, and so thank you very much to all of our speakers. Some final notes, we did record this. Watch your email either from WebEx or on various listservs that will show when the recording slides and notes are available. There's some editing and stuff that we want to do. We want to break down the recordings by presenters and have the slides and the notes take some time to compile. And so these will be available over the course of the next couple of weeks. There'll also be links to these at the Record Manager, Collection Manager, Community Center sites, as well as our SQC help site. We always say that the conversation continues. You do not need to wait for an official OCLC webinar to ask us cataloging policy questions. You may always email askqc@oclc.org. And we remind that we do have QC monthly webinars. We're taking off the month of July to kind of plan for the next 4 months, but we will be back with our office hours in August. You can also find product news, discussions, and a whole lot more in our community center areas. There's one for Record Manager and one for Collection Manager. There's a lot of conversation and information that is available in both of those as well. And with that, I would like to thank you very much for spending this almost 2.5 hours with us. And thank you. We will be in touch. Bye.